Hello internet friends, my name is Bay and you're about to watch my BlizzCon 2017 dev interview with Alex and Ian. Only about half of it is going to be actually in video. It's actually right down there. I'm going to finish it right now and get that online because my camera turned off because I am a complete idiot. So bear with it. The rest of the audio all sounds fine, and also it's transcripted on my website, link down below in the description box. But enjoy, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you at BlizzCon next year. Well, I've talked to Ian a lot more than I've talked to you, Alex. So I'm sure Ian told you all about me.
Oh yeah, only the good things.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't really want to like slate this anything crazy, just because you guys are going to be like just hammered by media all day today.
Whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah. So thank you for taking the time to sit down with me again. If you want to introduce yourselves to the camera, so everyone knows who I'm talking to today.
Sure. My name's Ian Hazzikostas, game director on WoW.
Afrasiabi, creative director on WoW.
I think the last time I talked to you, Alex, you were leading story and everything.
Lead world designer.
Yeah. So that's been a journey. Oh, you're fine.
Okay. It's been a long
Sorry,
journey.
I have to get to
Yeah, 14 years in the making. Yeah.
That's wild.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's why I prefaced before I turned the camera on. I asked Ian, how many times did you talk about Titan forging today? So just this one. So what's the story with Titan forging going into Battle for Azeroth?
So it's continuing. I think so. The gist of it is, the system of war forging, Titan forging, the idea that items can drop at a higher quality. We're overall happy with the potential for moments of excitement that adds. The longer term goals and sense of progression. Whether you're a raider working on Avatar right now, and that means you've killed the first few bosses in Tomb of Sargeras countless times. In the old days, you would just kill boss one, maybe not even bother looking at the corpse, because you knew as a matter of certainty there's nothing that could possibly drop that would make you stronger, that you would care about. And there's value in having that potential motivation. There's value across the whole raid group and still continuing to get stronger as you're beating your heads against whatever boss you're stuck on.
Sure.
Also, whether you're running content with a friend that maybe isn't super relevant for you, there's a chance that something relevant could occur. Now that said, there's definitely some spikes in the experience that we've definitely heard feedback rub people the wrong way. So I think we're looking more at tweaking and tuning the numbers and the frequency with which some of those events occur. One thing I can say, the Azerite armor pieces, we've currently said that helm, shoulder, and chest are likely to be these slots that are Azerite attuned and are activated by your Heart of Azeroth. Those will be exempt from Warforging, from Titan Forging. There's already enough depth and decision space there. You want to be really clear cut when an upgrade's an upgrade. If you have a heroic piece and you get a mythic piece, you should wear it. Don't worry about needing the Warforge or the +5 version of it. Okay. So it won't apply to all slots.
Okay, yeah. That's the thing, is that we were just basically going from the relic system to the new Azerite system, but if they can keep Titan forging going up and up and up, because every single point is all increased by the power of the item, that would just be like this continuous treadmill of like the same thing we've been dealing with for the last 2 expansions. That's what people were worried about.
Sure, yeah, and understood. And also, unlike the way relics work today, with the Heart of Azeroth, those traits are fixed, right? A helm is a helm is a helm. It's not a randomly generated set of properties. So if you have the perfect helm that comes off a raid boss, kill the mythic version of that boss, get it. That is your best in slot item.
Sure.
End of story.
Very different question. I don't think it was announced yesterday. Worgen and Goblin VU. Is that still?
What about them?
That was announced a while ago that they were being worked on, but they weren't like part of the push for the Battle of Azeroth, at least like on the systems panel updates. Is that still on the docket?
It's still on the docket. It's not something that's likely to make it into Battle for Azeroth at launch, but it's something we definitely want to do, and we'll get to it as soon as we can. Okay.
And then I guess the allied races coming as well is a small question. Are they all going to be like revoiced too? Like, are they all going to have their own background and everything too? Like,
yeah, so they'll get full character kits. So their own emotes, their own flirts, funnies, all that stuff, exertions, you name it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because they're very just like the 2 we could play on the floor. We're just like, it's still a Tauren, right? And it's still a Dragon.
Yeah, so you're playing an incomplete product at this point, right? We're not quite, ready for release, but we'll get there.
Okay. And also, the ones that are playable on the floor, I mean, High Mountain Tauren is very similar culturally to a regular Tauren, right? Course. Whereas a Nightborn, for example, is going to be much more distinct from anything currently existing on the Horde.
No, that makes sense. That's just like the one question I got over on stream is like, like, where are the other ones, and are they going to sound the same? Because they all looked the same. There were some Druid forums that were already in, just like the tattooing stuff goes forward. Yep. People were just wondering about how deep that system will go.
Moose horns on everything.
Yeah, basically, the biggest ones.
Fun with the moose horns.
The biggest ones.
Yeah.
So, to kick it back over to something a little more, I guess, contentious, do you have a point to go off of what legendaries will do? Like, will we have them going into the expansion and then they taper off in Battle of Azeroth, or like they just done when 8.0 drops?
So the Legion legendary system will not be carrying forward in its current form to Battle for Azeroth. There aren't going to be 100 legendaries out there that you can get from any source. The ones that you currently have, our current thought is they will taper off in power as you level towards 120, and they should if you have them, they're probably going to be worth using early on. By the time you hit max level, you're going to want to replace those with better, newer gear.
This is like an RP question. Alex, I can post this to you.
Yeah.
It was yelled out when you were doing the panel yesterday about Silvermoon and being on the Eastern Kingdoms and like the teleport wall that's still there.
Yeah.
Are there any? This is a really small one. This just came in, but is that going to happen any differently with fixing that to like?
Make that seamless, you know?
Yeah, make it seamless or flying there, I guess.
That's a nice to have addition to the game.
Sure.
And someday in the distant future, we could totally try and address that. But right now, we're not going to be pushing that out for the launch of Battle for Azeroth.
Okay. Right now, none of the allied races, too, can't be Death Knights? Is that going to be
I think one of the things we talked about was fictionally, if you think about where the Death Knight starting experience is, it might be a little weird, though honestly, like, we just need to reassess and see, like, hey, maybe Dark Irons could work as a Death Knight, but not all of them, right? Like, Zandalari might not make any sense.
Also, early on, I think we have this focus on allied races, have an experience that begins at 20, and, you'll start off with a little snippet of your own cultural background, and then head off to the big capital city. Our hero classes obviously would bypass that entire experience, and that also kind of muddies the waters, especially as we're rolling out allied races for the first time.
Do we have... I'm putting this in like the middle. We didn't talk about Taurus yesterday at all.
Yep. Yes. I mean, yesterday was Battle for Azeroth.
Right.
There's more to Legion, for sure.
Right. But do we know... Do you guys have like a timetable for when you want...
We do. It's coming up. We should be aiming to announce the date actually within the next week.
Oh, okay. So when I go home, it's going to be on the front page. That happened to me like last year too. We asked about launch dates and like oh, there it is. So because we were wondering, like the whole Mythic Grid community, all the people that I talked to were wondering because we have like the Christmas season coming up.
Yep.
There's always that like weird 2 weeks where you guys don't want to be tracking all that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that tends to work out. I mean, the exact same periods when a lot of people don't want to be doing serious progression rating is also when we don't want to be maintaining and supervising and hotfixing and tweaking progression rating. So it usually works out.
Okay. And then the mission table in Warlords transition to the class hall system we have in Legion now. That's not really a system that's in Battle for Azeroth. I guess just like the Warfronts and the islands sort of like take over that sort of micro gameplay, or...
It's still being decided, honestly. I think it's possible there'll be a form of missions the way we have them, just as a continued expression of sending scouts out to gather information, to get some stuff for you. It's certainly not a central feature if it happens the way it was back in Warlords, but we're happy with a lot of aspects of how sort of the order resources loop of going out and doing world quests, sending stuff off, having your raid missions come back that way. There's we're overall pretty pleased with how it currently stands, so it may continue forward.
Okay. This is because, so Battle for Azeroth is very Alliance versus Horde, right? Completely in the aftermath of all the Legion madness or anything like that, but the community has been asking a long time, like, you can't play with our friends on the opposite side for, like, dungeons and non-competitive PvP or, like, mythic raids. So is that still, like, an axed thing right now, especially because of this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty key to the game. Yeah, that faction divide.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that is the nature of what makes Warcraft Warcraft.
Okay.
It's the first question that you ask when you meet somebody IRL who plays World of Warcraft. It's so Alliance or Horde, right? There is an element of identity, there's an element of division, and that's not a boundary that I would expect to see broken down anytime soon, or anytime ever.
That could be broken on the BattleNet group's chat.
So that's a good question. Yeah.
So Not so character communities. The character communities that Matt talked about in the panel yesterday, those are character specific, and the point of those is, they're cross-server social groups designed to be organized around participating in shared activities. And because faction restrictions matter there, if you have your cross-server raiding group, your cross-server battleground group, you're joining that with a character. Only like faction characters can be in that. Now, BattleNet groups, which already exist today and will be fully supported in the client, those are battle tag based, right? So you could have a chat channel with someone playing a Horde character, someone playing an Alliance character, someone else playing Overwatch, but that's a removed from the game, removed from the character level friendship structure.
So character level, faction specific, but BattleNet, we could be
Exactly.
any franchise.
Yep.
All right. I guess this might go to Alex. People want to know about Wrathion, because he had a presence in the last 2 expansions, but then... And because Anduin is so forefront.
Yes.
So we were wondering if that's a continuation into Battle for Azeroth, or not.
We will... I don't want to say we will not see Wrathion, because anything is possible. But when we're doing character story arcs, or building these characters into the current expansion, or whatever narrative we might be building, we have to devote a lot of time and effort into getting them into the game and making things work around them. Otherwise, it just kind of feels like a token. And we don't want to treat our characters like that. It happens sometimes, and it's not necessarily something we want to do. It just unfortunately does. So we don't want to do that to Wrathion. We've talked about plans for him for various other things, but right now nothing's really planned for Battle for Azeroth.
Okay. Yeah, because you even teased Ajara yesterday. So like we know it's on like the plate somewhere.
Absolutely.
So that's just why the Wrathion question sort of a follow-up to that, because he wasn't mentioned at all. So we have the island system is all about, and has the PvP element. People want to know if Warfronts are also going to have any PvP element, like directly?
Not currently planned.
Okay.
Yeah, the structure is it's a large raid scale PvE experience.
Right.
That may be something we explore in the long run, but it's not the initial focus for sure.
Okay.
I mean, the reality is we want to be able to control the meta a little tighter than we can when it's a PvP situation, right?
Yeah.
Because once that happens, all of our careful planning can kind of go out the door, and things happen that we just don't account for. And that's fine. That's awesome for battlegrounds and other situations. But I think for something like this, where we really want to push that feeling of faction warfare and RTS type strategies, scripting things out like that and making it feel like a real awesome cohesive experience is important.
Yeah, I think the question comes up because they basically want their own version of like an Alterac Valley from like old that they can interact
basically
with it.
right, and that basically like at the point where Warfronts for PvP experience, that's basically just another AV or Isle of Conquest style map.
Yeah, okay.
With some twists, and I mean that's something we could do, but that's not what we're trying to do with this.
I mean, and you think about this, and it's a great point as well. Of like, look, let's get this system in a place where we feel like it's fun. People really enjoy what's happening. They want to participate. And then if we're like, you know what, like we can actually take this and do something cool PvP-wise with it, we will.
Yeah.
But for now, I think first let's start here and then branch out later.
Okay. I mean, we saw a little bit of it, and I was told by the CMs when I was streaming yesterday, like, you can bounce around because I knew that. Like, I had talked about all the specs that I talk about, like, individually.
Sure.
To not really look at them, because that's not the process you're currently looking at right now, like moving how the artifacts, because the game right now plays like, I played my Shaman yesterday, you just take Doomhammer off, and that's like what the class is. Because you're not in that point yet. So you have,
if you played Shadow Elemental, for example, you would have seen what used to be your artifact active as a talent. That you could take. So you can take Stormkeeper, right?
So
that's a process that we will undergo. I think for some classes, the artifact will just be gone, and I think the class holds up well without them, and is in some cases cleaner without it. In others, there are really iconic, cool-feeling, powerful abilities that can move forward in some form, and that's going to be a case-by-case determination.
Right, like Fire Mages or Demonology Warlocks, they're not going to really work the same without that golden trait, so... And then I guess the Golden Dragons sort of go into that same regard too. Like a lot of those huge passives, those procs like really make or break certain specs. So are those going to like, do you have plans to integrate them into baseline or?
It's I think a case by case determination.
Okay. Yeah.
I think the starting point is cut everything. The starting point is leave it all behind, and see what the holes are. Okay. And sometimes sometimes there are fewer than you'd imagine. Other times, it's turns out that yes, actually. the thing that this missing golden trait did is the perfect answer. Other times, there's a different answer that we can come up with that pushes the spec forward in a better way. But we don't want to feel tethered to what came before. Part of the point of making the artifact a Legion-only system was really being able to add, without a lot of restrictions, a ton of complexity, a ton of additional depth, modifications to your abilities. But if we would not have done any of that if we knew it was going to be carried forward indefinitely, because that's just it's a path towards complexity and bloat, and that's the nature of cleaning stuff up to make room for new cool things that will come your way.
Okay, I guess that curtails into the question that I sort of asked you at Gamescom, poked fun at, about the defensive war and the arms race for, in the Mythic world anyway, and in a way PvP. The more defensive a class is, the more it gets brought. So do you have thoughts to sort of attack or address the differences? And the rogues have 4 or 5, and then as you know, I play Enhanced Shell, I have 1.
Yep, I think, so yes, I think there is likely to be a round of disarmament when it comes to those sorts of abilities. I think rogues, it's awesome, and rogues have had that defensive niche for a while, but do they need 4 different layered tools that they can use? Almost certainly not. And there's also this prevalence of immunities that it's more homogenization than we were really comfortable with. If you think back, abilities like Ice Block and Divine Shield, those are the original ones. They're the gold standard. Immunity to everything, long cooldown. And then nowadays, increasingly, especially with talent trees, there's so many different classes that can spec into immunity on a 1-minute cooldown or a 90-second cooldown. And weirdly, it's the original ones are no one brings a paladin for Divine Shield to soak things because the cooldown is too long. It's impractical. And that's an odd place to be, right? And so we'd like to revisit things and compare them better against those original baselines and make changes where it makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, because a few other ones have been peppered throughout other specs. And you can say that you don't bring a paladin with Divine Shield to soak things, but on fights that are 14 minutes long, they can soak things up to 3 times,
well,
so yeah.
Sure, but you don't bring them specifically for that, because there's 4 classes that are better.
Oh, better at it, yeah.
Exactly.
Like rogues.
Right? Yeah, or hunters, or...
hunters, yeah. Absolutely. And I guess Alex can probably take this one. Moonkins are looking for their new forms, their updated form. They got the pretty little texture update, but they're still just a big ogre.
We'd love to get to that at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
more of a turkey, really.
Well, yeah, I guess, but it's still the ogre skeleton.
Yeah, that's a sensitive subject with me.
Okay.
It goes back to 2004, 2005.
Oh gosh.
It's I agree. I think it would be nice for us to re-envision them. Now we also have to be careful there. Up-resing is one thing.
Yeah.
I would want to take it further. And when we get down to that point, it's well, now people are well, I like the old Moonkin form. I just want an up-res version, or I don't want any of that.
Right.
So it's always dancing around that balance of what we think is cool and what the players think is cool, and finding some happy ground.
Well, there's a lot of little, I just saw the post this morning that a lot of our raid-wide class buffs are coming back. Even though you took them out. Potentially. They're they're on the build, so people are oh, they're coming back. Right? So that's what I was wondering about, because you're almost it's a backtrack on the point you wanted to make for when you go forward, that you're stronger as a group because you're a group, not because of all the things you have to bring. Because right now it's Vantis, Augment Rune, Flask Food, which is the simplest the raid prep has been ever.
Yep.
Speaking from the vanilla player, when I have the picture of Cthulhu with all the buffs off my screen on CT mod, old UI. So that's what people are wondering if we're going to have that huge string of stuff again.
I think, so yeah, there's definitely some experiments at the class side that people are seeing at the BlizzCon demo today.
Yeah.
Some of those are the return of buffs like Arcane Intellect, Mark of the Wild. That's a mix of flavor, of feeling like you can help out your group mates, and yes, being stronger when you're in a party versus on your own.
Okay.
There's also some value in encouraging diversity in composition, right? If you're forming a group and you have a bunch of, mages, but you don't have a warlock, there should be a reason for you to say, all right, let's look for a warlock actively, because as we all know, as good as DPS balance might ever be, there's always going to be someone who's at the top, someone who's at the bottom, even if the gap is only a couple %. And it's very easy for the community perception to be, well, okay, mages are the best caster, let's just bring a bunch of them.
Sure.
And that is unfortunate for the Moonkin and Shadow Priest and Warlock players out there. And when you want a varied group, I think that makes life better for all players.
Okay. Yeah, and that sort of lends into like this huge long. I'm not gonna read this entire paragraph question, but the key phrase here is that class fantasy was your big push in Legion, with the artifact system and the huge class reworks that I helped you guys beta test for 7 months. So I guess what's the scope of class changes you guys are really looking at? Looks like a lot more targeted, like tweaks, not a huge sweeping brushstroke again with Battle for Azeroth.
Yeah, so I think in battle, so improvements to fidelity, visuals, animation, that's an ongoing effort, and that's something that I think we want to continue really in perpetuity. I would not expect to see dozens of specs fundamentally reworked like we did in Legion. I think clearly there were a lot of large changes there. Some of those, I think a lot of those worked out well, a handful less so, and so there might be some specs that see a more thorough rework, that's more revisiting what we did in Legion, taking a second crack at it, learning based on feedback. But by and large, I think more targeted changes, certainly strengthening fantasy, but we recognize there's a very high cost to change in the class design space. You know, when somebody comes back and logs in and looks at their bars and doesn't recognize half the things on it, that's an incredibly alienating moment.
Like survival hunters, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, no, exactly, right?
Yeah.
But there are plenty of people, and it's a scary thing for us to do, and it's not something we do lightly, and it's not something we plan to do on a regular basis in expansions.
Yeah, but nothing major like making it like a survival hunter is happening with 8.0 though. Like that's
not currently planned now.
Okay, that's what the question basically boiled down to in this huge amount. And I guess the lore side of things, what you guys are crafting, feels kind of like there isn't like a big bad. We went from 2 expansions in a row with big bads. So is Battle for Azeroth more of like an open end where you're gonna like sort of interject, like because there's all the dungeons have different branching story bits. Right? 10 of them at launch.
Yep.
So, and I would assume going forward you're going to be able to patch in more like you did in Legion. You had 3 new ones.
Yeah.
So, is
Quite
there,
possible.
I guess I'm looking for is there an arc you want to play with like one major character that may come into it? Or are you just trying to like open the world up and this is a bad person, this is a bad thing? Like each patch will sort of have like a theme, I suppose, going forward?
There's definitely an arc. Absolutely.
Okay.
This is still Warcraft. This is still WoW.
Yeah.
We're going to need big baddies with targets painted on their backs to take out. We're going to have those, and we're going to build that up, and it's going to be a slow burn through the start of this thing. And as we kind of peel back those layers as we're fighting this all-out faction war, we'll start to see things make themselves known to us.
Right.
And then that will, of course, escalate beyond ship, and we'll see where that goes.
Do you have plans after Uldir, as far as like the raid progression for tiers? Uldir being the high mountain of the expansion.
Right.
Can you tell us anything about what the next raid tiers, not necessarily their names or the bosses, but kind of what to expect for, the raid bosses after that, or the raid, the raid content coming up after that?
Are we doing like 3 tiers again? I guess that's the bottom line.
And I think we don't have specific plans to announce on that front, but I think we're happy with how the structure for Legion has played out. Told some great stories, taken players to some epic environments, and I think continuing that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so maybe something similar to Legion with the way things were released.
Yep, quite possible. Yeah.
So 77 days, right, Ian?
That's the magic number.
Is it?
Turns out.
But, do you have anything else on your side?
Do you have any plans for profession reworks specifically? Maybe, the stars or the rank system. Is that going to be staying or going?
So, to my understanding, that is staying. We're still kind of investigating possible changes to professions. There will be changes. That is, it's probably a bit less content, like a bit less quest story focus. There will still be quests behind the professions, but not quite the same. A dozen quests per each set of blacksmithing patterns or leatherworking patterns that we had in Legion. Want to go back more to the systems roots of it. But as much as possible, we want to give players options to customize their gear and to keep crafting relevant into the end game.
This is one that I've always poked you about, even back when you were on my show like years ago, which is with the new allied races, you're making new like racial passives, which some of them are really neat. Like the ones with High Mountain Torrent seem very flavorful until you get into like the power racial, like either like the active or the passives. So is that still like a point where you think they're all pretty much that 1% you told me before, that they all don't impact too much? Because they do,
really sort of change things. Like obviously there's different hierarchies of how that like berserking scales really well in late game versus like 1% crit. So is there like the power racial passives have always been a point of contention in the community?
Sure.
So like why don't like more flavorful ones exist but not the power ones?
Because I think part of it is there is value to those power ones, and
Nice.
there's something active that you can do that's a reminder that you are this race. I think where we are right now, the ones that affect your stats or your damage tend to not be such major factors in races. At the end of the day, we want people to play what they feel is coolest, right?
Sure.
And if we ever get to a point where you feel like everyone needs to change to a certain race because that's optimal, then that's a problem for us. We're not seeing a ton of that around power racials these days. The exceptions are more utility things. It's probably Arcane Torrent and Goblin Rocket Jump.
That's
are the
what
two
I wanted
that
you to say. I was gonna.
have been the big ones. And Rocket Jump was a kill rate and knockback quirk. Arcane Torrent is a bigger deal.
Yes.
That's when we're actually looking at redesigning.
Oh really?
Yeah, I think it's a problem in dungeons. It's a problem in PvP.
Yep.
Right, you're fighting a bunch of blood elves as a caster in arena. You're trying to get a cast off. One kicks you, the other kicks you. Then they have Arcane Torrents. Like it's not super fun or flavorful in like the outdoor world. There was a low level player. Like you have your first quest as a blood elf that's like push this button.
Yeah.
And it doesn't actually feel all that cool. And then at the high end, it's really degenerate and broken. That's a candidate for something to revisit.
Yeah, you brought up PvP in that instance, but we just saw how prevalent it was at the MDI.
Totally. Yep.
So like groups of 4 blood elves would just chain pull like 13 mobs into the hole, and other groups that didn't stack blood elves couldn't do that.
Yep, and that's a sign something's a problem. Especially when, again, I don't think that the majority, the average blood elf out there, feels super cool because of Arcane Torrent.
No, we're fine.
Are we good?
Yeah, those were the last couple ones that I had.
Awesome, thank you.
So that'll be it. Ian,
Thank you.
Alex.
Yep. Thank you so much.
As always, team.